Okay, in this CE number 2, I want to see if I can keep it under 20 minutes and do the story of what happened after the birth of my son in the hospital. We ended up at a hospital. It was a home birth, but there were complications, and we ended up at in the ICU for 72 hours at this place, Mary Bridge Children's Hospital in Tacoma, Washington. So I wanted to make like 3 points on this story, and it's been 27 years. I've never told this story to anyone, and I've just been waiting to, because I had already heard the rumors of joint human alien bases underneath, underground and everything. And after I tell you about this story, some of you guys will go like, oh yeah, that's probably what happened. So it was real traumatic. My worst nightmare was to end up having to go to a hospital in an ambulance, but we did. And they took the baby, not me. We had to follow in a car. He was okay. He weighed 8.5 pounds, but he had breathing problems when he was born. It looked like he would have been okay to stay home, but the ambulance, this is mostly an audio, sorry, but the ambulance, there were 2 teams of ambulances in the house. The midwife that we had to call them because she would lose her license. He was like the 1,000th baby. Anyway, so we get into the hospital, and I get in there after the poor little baby was hooked up. He had an IV giving him sugar water or whatever, but he was sleeping soundly. He wasn't premature. He had inhaled some fluid. So anyway, okay, so here's the 2 main things about that whole thing. The protocol in the ICU for the babies, and I could just talk a long time about details about it, but I want to get to the main things about him, was that like we were there 72 hours. After 12 hours, I felt the breast milk come down for the first time. And I had to ask, they told me you have to ask permission from the doctor to try to breastfeed your son. Me and his dad stayed in the ICU with him every second. There were other babies in there, and I was just traumatized visually by the machinery that was hooked onto these other babies. But our son did not have any of that. He was healthy. He just had oxygen. They had an oxygen thingy on him for the first couple, like 6 hours, then they took that off. So all they had on him was a needle IV, and they kept taking blood samples every 4 hours, pricking his toe. I didn't like any of it. I wanted to leave, but we had signed his contract, and it's like you're in the police station after that. And me and the dad, I felt he was okay, but they made you feel like, well, you don't want to just take the chance to take him home soon because something might happen and then you'll be responsible. So anyway, so there was that. And this was in Washington State, and they didn't really have a nice attitude toward midwife or home birth. So there it was. Okay, so here's the 3 main things that happened. So they had me pumping breast milk to save it in these jars, baby food jars. Put your name and the date on there, and then when you're released to go home, you're supposed to take the jars of breast milk, which would have the colostrum, which is the first dose of breast milk when the child is born has this stuff called colostrum, which is not the same as the regular milk the rest of the time. And after 12 hours, I felt the milk come down, and I had to ask the doctor. I said, I want to try to breastfeed him, and they go, you need permission from the doctor. And the doctor was not nice, and I caught him in the elevator. Can I have permission? Why do you want to breastfeed your dad? He was asking me why I wanted to. And he turned really ice cold, the blue-eyed doctor, and that's when I thought, oh man, they got an agenda not to let you bond with breast milk. They didn't encourage it. They wanted you to, he did reluctantly give me permission. I sat with my son. I tried to breastfeed him. He was sleeping soundly, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was very psychic at that time, too, and I looked down at that little baby. I offer him the breast, and he's got his mouth closed like a kind of a semi-pissed off person. And their lips are shut. It's like, nope, I ain't going to drink that. And he just kept sleeping. He was just sleeping, looked very peaceful. He was chubby. He was 8.5 pounds, and he was born chubby. But he didn't want the breast. He didn't respond at all to it. Of course, he was traumatized, So, and and of course they're feeding him this IV. They didn't give him antibiotics, but they were giving him some sugar water. So that didn't work, and after 12 hours, I'm trying to think of how it went, but what happened was there was an older lady nurse that came on duty, and she said, oh yeah, they had these bottles, but he wouldn't open his mouth. So this old lady nurse was sitting with me and the dad, and she took our son, put him on her knee, took a little paper cup, and put an ounce of the breast milk in the cup. So his first drink of my breast milk when he was like 24 hours old was in a cup, and he actually drank it out of a cup. No bottle, he didn't want to do any of that. But he gulped down the breast milk. So the protocol there was every 4 hours, the babies had to be drinking 1 ounce of milk before they release them from the hospital, right? So every 4 hours, we'd give him a cup of milk, and he would drink it out of a cup, 1 day old. Okay, so the next thing was, did I mention the refrigerator? That was in the other thing. Okay, they had this big industrial-sized refrigerator in the hallway outside of the ICU near the nurse's office. And people were supposed to, in the bathroom, they had these breast milk pump station kind of thing. You felt like a cow. It was really weird. I saw a couple other ladies that were doing this, and they wanted you to pump all your breast milk and then save it. They had this refrigerator had, where are we, 6 minutes. The refrigerator had all these shelves full of stacks of baby food jars with breast milk in them. And the day that I left, I'm skipping ahead, we were there 72 hours. The day that we left, I took however many jars we had, 2 or 3 jars of my stuff with my name on it. And then I saw the thing that really made me think what I thought was that there was a bunch of jars in there outdated, like months old, weeks old, with people's names. So either they were still in the ICU, but there weren't that many other babies, or they had gone home. A lot of women just went home and didn't take the breast milk. And there was tons of these jars in there. And I thought, well, what are they doing with them? Okay. Because they had all these people's breast milk who didn't take it home. So the other thing in the hospital that's worth noting was every night there was this hallway, and there was this, on wheels, this robot that looked like a giant microwave. And had some kind of door here. And it didn't happen during the day. And like I say, me and his dad were the only parents that stayed in the ICU. They gave us a rocking chair, so. But at night, the halls are really quiet. So this robot would travel down this hallway, and it would go somewhere by itself, no one accompanying it. 1995. So one day I followed the robot one night, and he went around the corner, went kind of slow into this, anyway, I'm ruining this picture, into this room that had a door that had like this radiation, do not enter. And the door opened automatically for the robot, and he went in. Okay, so it's your guess as good as mine. What was in the freaking robot at the ICU at Mary Bridge Children's Hospital? And I'd watch him go by, he went by regularly, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times per night or something like that, back and forth. So obviously, someone was putting something in it, and it was taking stuff in this room. Okay, so that was weird. All right, so the next weird thing was that the second night, and this is just relating to aliens, so I'm trying to keep it on the subject. So the next night, the final night when we were there, it was 2 a.m., and the hallway was quiet. And, by the way, the nurse on duty was this Mexican woman who had black eyes. And our son was really okay, and I remember talking to her, and I says, if we sign a different contract, they'll let us out early. Oh, she gave me stuff. She goes, what if you take him home and something happens? And, you have to make these decisions, and, yeah, what if, even though I felt confident, but anyways, there was everything working against taking him home. They want him there for 3 days. Okay, so it was 2 a.m. in the morning, and I decided to take a walk. And this is my favorite part of the story, so it's hilarious. So I decided to take a walk, and there was this lounge that I hadn't seen before with these couches. I should have been sleeping on those instead of the rocking chair. They didn't even give me a bedroom to sleep in, and I had I needed aftercare because I had this 3-inch tear going, anyway, he probably would have been a cesarean birth if I got in the hospital, but, so it was a pretty hard birth, it hurt. So anyway, so there was this, lounge area, and then there was this television up in the corner. Okay, it's 2 a.m. in a hospital, there's no one around, just me. So I look up at this TV, and there's a cartoon going on. And some of you older people, or I don't know if they do it now, but it was a cartoon with the 3 magpies. And I forget their names, but there were 3 black magpies. It was not Heckle and Jekyll. They were 2 magpies from when I was a kid. This is 3 magpies. And it's a cartoon, right? So I get there looking at this cartoon right at the time when the 3 magpies were being, I kid you not, abducted by a spaceship. And it shows the 3 magpies rising into a spaceship. They get into the spaceship. It's a cartoon. And the first thing that happens is there's this tall gray, that I would call it, sinister looking, like a mean Syrian gray alien, waiting for them. He's wearing a lab coat. The 3 fucking magpies, excuse me. And I'm watching this cartoon. And immediately he's got an assistant, right? The Syrian alien with the lab coat on. And you could see the little gurneys that him and his assistant are scrambling to grab the 3 birds and strap them down on the gurneys, right? Abduction style, right? And so the 3 magpies start freaking out, and one of them decides to freak out, and he gets all the other 2 magpies before the aliens could actually get the straps on him, because you could see in the cartoon all this equipment, man, they were gonna fuck with those magpies. And I'm watching this cartoon. So before the tall alien guy got the magpies on the table, the magpies start clowning around and freaking out and doing all this slapstick comedy and all this whoopee-dooey thing, and like woo, and then they start fooling around with each other. The way that in cartoons it shows how sometimes characters will get freaky funny and it'll disarm. Well, that's what was happening. So the face of the alien is showing little signs of confusion and getting disarmed because of the magpie's behavior. They were not scared. They were doing this slapstick comedy routine through the whole cartoon, so that the alien couldn't even get a hold of him in the bed and strap him down on the gurney, right? And I'm watching this, and the 3 magpies, I don't remember how they got away, but they got away from the alien by using humor and just, like they didn't show they were scared. They were using humor. So anyway, I had to tell that story because what are the odds, you guys, that I would be in this hospital with my poor son, going through all this stuff, this breast milk that got stored there, this robot, and then the cartoon about the abduction, and then the 3 magpies escaping the abduction stuff by being funny and wacko. Like, you could tell that alien here was not only frightened but didn't know what to do about their ability to energetically repel the procedure. Okay, so I said it, I'm at 13 minutes. So I just wanted to finally tell that story. So, and I'm going to take a little more time because it's not ending, because I might as well just say everything. So we went home at 72 hours. Oh yeah, the other funny thing was they wanted the baby to be drinking an ounce of breast milk every 4 hours. Everything had to be timed. And the 3rd day, we really wanted to go home. So we were giving our son, and by the way, all his vitals were great. He was real healthy. He wasn't premature in a bad state. He was just a healthy, chubby kid. And he's in the I.C.U. So all the nurses kept looking at his vitals, and they says, well, he's got to have this vital going on and this number here and there before he will let you home. So at one point, it was time to try to feed him. He didn't want to drink. And the nurse left the room, and his dad, bless his heart, just tipped the cup himself and drank it. Here, the baby drank it, because if he hadn't done it, they would all start going to red alert. Ah, the child doesn't want to drink. Now, I knew, look, he doesn't have to drink he's not going to die if he doesn't drink every 4 hours. I knew that, but you couldn't tell him that. They do everything by the clock, and they look for every excuse to keep the child in there and find something wrong with your human-type parenting, because really the agenda here was to get your child away from being a human. This tug of war was going on during my pregnancy, and not so much afterwards, because his dad wanted me to give childbirth. We lived on this property way off the grid. We had no phone. We had our own electricity. We had a windmill and solar power and everything, our own water. But we lived at the base of Mount Rainier, way up in the woods. And even though I would have, his dad wanted to deliver the child. He didn't know anything about it. He didn't want a midwife. There was all this argument going on. I would have loved to have had the child too, outside in the meadow on the grass by the barn. But I had a feeling, nah, I needed some, safety around me, because, I just had signals during the pregnancy that it might be difficult. And it was. There was a difficulty. So anyway, so then, after the abduction-y thing that I mentioned in the first video, there was that. And now I'm in this freaking hospital. And it looked like, well, they got his signature. They were taking blood out of his toe. I couldn't stop that. And it was just this tug of war to keep the child human. Because during the pregnancy, which I didn't mention before, there was an episode when I was 7 months pregnant where I was dreaming. And in the dream, there was this kind of like Draco versus human tug of war for the soul of the child. There was this energy that wanted to be born through that baby. And in his dream, I'm thrashing around, like it's got to be human, got to be human. So I was just trying to ordain that the baby would have more human qualities rather than take on the characteristics of this other energy system that, it's not that I didn't have it in my bloodline, but his dad really had it. And I don't feel safe to say how that manifested in the relationship. But, so when we got, so anyway, so we left the hospital, it was all good. And when we got, just so y'all know about the breast thing, when we got home, the three of us slept for 24 hours, and the child breastfed just fine for the rest of his breastfeeding time. There was never an issue about it. So there was the old victory going on. He just didn't want a nurse in the hospital. Didn't blame him. But the minute we got home, he just took right to it, not a problem. And then we went on to live our life closer to the earth, if you will. And so I guess I can say this. I thought, that the breastfeeding, why did I do it? Well, because who wants to wake up in the middle of the night and have to warm up a bottle? And who wants to give your child formula? Now, I was adopted, so I didn't have my mother with breast milk. So I was given formula, and there's a time for everything. But nowadays I notice that this generation of mothers are still, not only are they not breastfeeding, I'm sure many are, and back in the day, it was like, oh, look, the hippie chicks are breastfeeding. There's always been this American thing not to do it. And I'm like, why would you want to give it in the middle of the night, buy formula that has all this crap in it? Why wouldn't you want to breastfeed? So in the town where I was living, I breastfed him, and you don't just whip it out in public. You can do it very discreetly. So I was able to go hang out at the coffee shop in the morning, take the baby with me, and no bottles. The only time we tried a bottle with him was when I had to go to the dentist one time, and I gave a bottle. So he was always breastfed, it was all good. But the agenda seems to be get the child off of the body of the mother. And not only that, but I watch a lot of TikTok videos, babies are shoved, they could put a pacifier all over them. And I try to we bought these pacifiers for our son, and then I tasted one, it tasted like rubber. So we never gave him a pacifier. He didn't need one or want one. and he did fine without it. And so there was that. But this is 27 years ago, this agenda to not breastfeed. Why would they give a heck? So why they would give a heck would be, now that I know what I know, there's a lot of uses for breast milk, aren't there, folks? So you can imagine this colostrum, how valuable it must have been, and maybe this little robot, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's activities going on under that particular hospital, which is located in Tacoma, Washington on the Hill, not far from Madigan Hospital, which I got a story about that there, not far from the base, and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, 20 minutes, there we did it. So I finally told the story about the hospital. So the breast milk thingy, the doodly dad, and the cartoon with the aliens. Da da da. So anyway, thank you for listening, to whom it may concern, and let's hope that these clandestine experiments that are nefarious aren't still happening, and that we can, the digital age is fine and everything. There's more I would say about being in that room full of all those electronics. I'm not trying to say they're good or bad, but boy, oh boy, did they try to get me away from bonding with a child. Okie dokie. So that's it. Thank you for listening.